The Brown Park Podcast is brought to you by Grow Clinics. They're Australia's leading hair transplant clinics, and you can go to growclinics.com.au. Hello.
G'day, mate. What's news?
Today, we have a very interesting guest on the show. He has been a former policeman. He's been a paratrooper, a special forces officer. He's been in close protection specialist for high net worth clients, and now he's an author telling it all.
It's interesting that you go from doing all that to becoming an author. So this is different for us, and I'm looking forward to getting into it.
Yeah. His name is A.C. Edwards. That's an author's name, right? And he joins us on the Brown Park Podcast.
The Brown Park Podcast.
Question.
Hit me with it.
Have you ever considered joining the army at any point?
Yes. Funny enough, years ago, me and the boys thought about joining the Army Reserves. Yes.
Okay.
Why?
No. I actually lived in Townsville for 3 years.
Heavy Army community, yeah. Yep.
Heavy Army community. And we actually got to do a live fire exercise with the Army up there one night.
How'd you go with that?
So petrified. You know what I'm like. and old me, way back when, did not cope because we had to go up in a Chinook.
Okay.
You know what a Chinook is?
Yeah, it's one of those helicopters with two propellers.
Yes. Went up in a Chinook, and I was petrified. I could not get on it.
You took a Chinook?
Yeah, I did. I could not get on it. I was like, they had to...
You didn't do it?
No. So they had to coax me into it. They had to go, You will be fine. We are the Army. When was the last time you heard something like that go wrong? And I'm like, well, never, because you're the Army. And he goes, right.
And you're going to classify that even if it does go wrong, but go on.
So, but get on. And so I went, big boy pants on, because I was petrified. I wasn't going to do it. All the Army was on the helicopter, and all the crew there were going, you can do this, mate. Come on, you can do it. And then I ended up, they put me in the jump seat, which was great, which is the middle in between the two pilots.
Mm-hmm.
And so went over to a live fire exercise, got put in a tank.
Oh.
And then they took us out into the middle of wherever it was in Townsville, and we actually got to sit in like a media pit with all the tanks and fake firing and everything happening around us for a couple of hours. It was the most incredible experience I've ever had.
So that sounds like an epic day out.
It was. And I wish now, as somebody who has later in life found himself and is not scared shitless of absolutely fucking everything, could go and do it again and have that experience without being petrified, because it was amazing.
Be epic. I would love to have done something like that, or do something like that.
Yeah. And when we were up in the Chinook, quick funny story is on the way home, it was cloudy, and they do a lot by sight. Back then, I don't know what it's like now. This was, 20 years ago. And as we're flying, they've gone, can't really see much here. And one of the pilots, because I had the headset on, so I could hear the pilots talk because I was still in the jump seat. And he's gone, mate, there's a mountain over to the right side of us. There's a mountain over to the right side. And he goes, oh, and pulled us all. Pull up. So they pulled us up because they couldn't see it because it was cloudy. And they then had to get on and say, look, it's going to get very cold for a second because we're actually quite high up. And so the cabin became freezing, and then they had to cruise for a while to find a gap in the cloud to see Townsville. And then this gap opened up in the sky, and they've gone, all right, go through that, and then they punched through the hole so they could get back into Townsville and see where they were.
Epic! I would have loved to be a part of that. That would have been sweet. So your job always gives up some cool adventures, doesn't it? I love it. Yeah,
it does. But yeah, did I shit myself? Absolutely.
You shit yourself on a schnook.
Do you prefer A.C. Edwards for the sake of this because it's your book?
Oh, well, that's the pen name, but yeah, it's Andy.
How do you come up with the pen name? I mean, obviously that's your initials, but how did you decide not to go with Andrew Edwards? How did you decide to go with A.C. Edwards?
Andrew Edwards is a psychic, isn't it? Is that Andrew? Anyway, go on.
No, is he?
No, that's John Edwards.
I don't know. No, I just thought Andrew Edwards was a bit of a mouthful. And, the old two-letter name is pretty popular, in some writing circles. So, I thought, it's a bit more punchy, bit more sort of thrillish. That's yet to be proven, but that's why I went for it.
Now, you're a former policeman, a paratrooper, and a special forces officer.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
a security officer.
How do you get into this line of work, or how did you decide, or more to the point, what did you want to be, and then how did you fall into where you are?
Wow. Well, look, as a kid, I always wanted to join the Army. My dad was in the Army for 42 years, and I grew up around a variety of, Army barracks and officers' messes, including overseas. So, I spent a lot of my youth overseas, with my dad's postings. So it was just, I wanted to do it. There was never any sort of overt pressure from Dad to join the Army. I just wanted to do it. At one point, I decided, look, I needed to take a bit of a break to go back to university. And during that time, I was tapped on the shoulder by a very young police force, as it was then, the Australian Federal Police. So I moved across I applied for and was accepted to the Feds, and I was in the Federal Police for some 6 or so years. And during that time, I was still in the Army Reserve.
Sorry, what year was this?
85, I entered the Federal Police, and then 89 back into the Army.
How did you discover that you wanted to become a paratrooper? Because, that's a, Army is one sort of thing, but a paratrooper takes it to the next level.
So paratrooper is what? Well, it's like parachute? Is it like you're jumping on into the war zone?
Yeah. So, look, at the time, and we don't have it anymore, at the time, the Australian Army had a single battalion, infantry battalion, with the parachute role, and that was the 3rd Battalion, or 3 RAR, 3rd Battalion Royal Australian Regiment. So they had a traditional military parachuting role. Unfortunately, that was then taken away by a later Chief of the Army. So the only parachute capability that remains in the Australian Army is with Special Forces. And that's not a bad thing, but they are two totally different roles and tasks. So, and we won't sort of go down there unless you want to explore that.
Yeah, what's the difference between that and Special Forces?
Yeah, well, okay, so a traditional, if you want to call it that, traditional infantry parachute battalion is designed for en masse drops to get a lot of soldiers on the ground quickly for a number of different operations. So they might be what's known in the book as coup de main operations. So, for example, you might drop 120 blokes or more, maybe the entire battalion, into a drop zone in order to quickly take a bridge. Or you might drop the entire battalion quickly onto an airfield in order to take the airfield in order for other battalions to fly in as part of a services protected evacuation, for example. So it's larger scale. Special Force paratrooping is smaller scale because it's a different role. They have a different task. Now, commandos have a different task again from Special Air Service. I was a commando. So they're tasked, again, with medium-scale raiding, so it wouldn't be unusual to have an entire commando company drop in on a target or close to a target and then move in to conduct a raid on that target. Special Air Forces, Special Air Services task is different again. Much smaller patrol groups, either designed for very targeted hits on enemy hierarchy, or most often is the case on long-range reconnaissance and intelligence gathering. So 3 different roles, 3 different types of paratrooping. So the only parachute capability that remains in the Australian Army is with Special Forces.
Sounds like a fun way to make a living. Well, obviously it's a serious way to make a living, but there'd be a lot of adrenaline associated with it as well, right?
Yeah, it's definitely for adrenaline junkies. Look, and here's a true thing. I was terrified every single time I put the rig on and got into the aircraft. Absolutely shitting myself. And I wasn't the only one. There were very few blokes that would be in the back of that aircraft that weren't at least nervous, some throwing up with fear. But I found the fact that I was leading those guys in the aircraft and they were all looking to me, I had to lead them out and then be in one piece on the ground to then move on with the operation. I found that helped dispel my fear. I had a greater fear of letting myself down and letting my troops down. So that certainly was a greater fear than leaping out in the middle of a roaring night, black as a dog's guts, with all your combat equipment strapped onto you, not knowing what's going on outside.
You can't really show fear in a situation like that, can you? It's kind of like being a parent. If something scary happens, you've still got to calm your children down and sort of go, no, everything's all right, even though inside you could be shitting bricks.
Yeah, well, exactly. So, I just trained myself to be able to look back down the parachute stick. It's called a stick. It's a line of blokes, all with their rigs on. The red lights are on inside the back of the aircraft. It's bucketing around. The load masters and the jump masters have opened the doors to the aircraft. It's roaring in, and you're watching that red light, waiting for it to change to green. You've hooked onto the static line cable, and I'm running through in my mind everything that's got to happen, not so much when I'm in flight underneath the canopy, but when we hit the ground, what's got to happen, where are we going, how are we going to rally, where are the troops going to be, what's our next task, but still absolutely shitting myself because I'm getting closer to that door. And I just managed to train myself, I guess, to be able to look back down the stick at my boys and just give them a smile and a thumbs up. And you could see, because I was the old man of the unit. Me and my company sergeant major, we were the old boys. I was 30, 29.
The old boys are 30.
Yeah. Most of the lads in my company would, the average age was 23.
So, really, Jesus. Well, I guess it's a good age to do it, right? Because you're younger and the fear of the consequences may not be as... Yeah,
well, that's it. And look, it's a young man's game. Soldiering's a young man's game, but paratrooping, totally a young man's game, apart from, the fact that, when you're 22, 23, you're 10 foot tall and bulletproof, you're immortal. Nothing's going to touch me.
Damn straight.
It's only when you start to get older that you start to feel the creaks and the groans in the knees and the back, and you're married and you've got a little baby girl that you sort of go, oh shit, what's going on here?
I just want to pause for 2 seconds. Sorry, Dion, did you just knock over your coffee, by the way, and spill it everywhere?
Yeah, I've got shit everywhere, to be honest.
I could tell he was trying to be so polite and listen to the story, and I know what was going on. I'm sitting there going, he's just knocked his coffee fucking flying everywhere. Oh, my God.
That's all right. No worries. It's brilliant. Well, I've deliberately not got a coffee here for exactly that reason.
The show must go on, but it wasn't a coffee. It was a whole cup of water, and I've got a wet ass. But anyway.
Do you need a moment?
No, we're good. I've got the switch out. We're good. Andy, I was going to ask, so growing up in a military household, was that super strict for you then? Like, did that teach you a lot about discipline and all that? Was your dad a hard ass, or was it different? Was it sort of compartmentalised from it all?
Oh, yeah, look, it's a good question. I don't think that my folks were any more strict, generally speaking, than my mates' mums and dads. In fact, Dad was probably the softie. Mum was the hard taskmaster.
Yeah, that's always a way.
No, I don't think so. I think what you got to do too is you have to put it into the context of the generation at the time. I look back on it, and I certainly don't recall having an agonising and brutalised childhood, but it was certainly tougher than the way I brought my kids up. There were times when my mates could go out gallivanting and I wasn't allowed. But it's just one of those things.
You were talking before about how your command and your troops and things like that would, you'd have to fly in en masse and maybe take a bridge or take an airport or something like that. Is that something you've ever done? Have you taken a bridge? Have you taken an airport? Have you been in charge of something like that?
If you can talk about it.
Well, yeah, obviously a number of times on exercises, yeah. Look, there was a particular event that's a matter of historical record now, so we can certainly talk about it. In 1990, got to get this right, I'm pretty sure it was 97. It blew up again in Papua New Guinea, as it often does. And the PNGDF, the Papua New Guinea Defence Force, mutinied and marched on Parliament in Port Moresby. And it was a pretty ugly state of affairs. There was a lot of rioting in the streets. There was a lot of death and murders going on. The Australian government decided at the time to conduct and this is a term I mentioned a little earlier, an SPE, a Services Protected Evacuation. So I was in command of what was called the Online Parachute Company at the time. So we were on very short degree of notice. We were always kitted up and ready to go in the case of something like this. So very long story short, we were deployed along with a battalion headquarter group and some other attached airborne forces to be flown in over Jackson Airfield in Port Moresby by the RAF, to drop onto Jackson's, which was occupied at the time by dug-in soldiers of the PNGDF. So they had dug in on the airstrip and around the airport to defend against exactly this. And our mission was to drop in on Jackson's, take the airfield, secure the airfield for another battalion. I think it was one battalion at the time. We're going to follow on, fly in, and then we had to hold the airport while one RAR then moved through Port Moresby and evacuated Australian citizens who were being gathered at various evacuation points. Didn't come, and we were at Richmond Air Force Base. We had done para parade, so we've got all our rigs on. The aircraft's tack loaded, and we're loaded for bear. We've got ball ammunition in the weapons. We're ready to go. And the aircraft were warming up. We were mounting the aircraft, and we were stood down. Last minute, diplomatic solution was found. So, I mean, we were almost in the air, and I mean, it would have been an absolutely legendary.
Yeah.
I mean, every bloke in my company that I've spoken to since then, it goes down as the greatest regret of certainly their military careers. Some of us, our lives. It would have been an absolute ball terror, and it would have been messy. There's no two ways about it. It would have been very messy. But, maybe we achieved our aim, just the threat
of it,
that it was going to happen. Got the PNGDF to pull back, and sort of law and order was as much as it is in Port Moresby. And don't get me wrong, I love PNG. I'm an old PNG hand. It was restored, and peace broke out.
Well, I mean, PNG is hectic just on a normal day-to-day basis. So I can imagine what it would be like jumping into that. I guess in a wartime would be massively hectic.
Yeah, well, I mean, PNGDF were, they had troops dug in on and around the airfield, so they were prepared to fight it out.
Brown Pop.
As always, a huge thank you to our sponsors, Grow Clinics. Now, if you're tired of looking in the mirror and seeing your hair thinning, you're not alone. Hair loss affects millions of Australians, but the good news is there are solutions. Grow Clinics can help you get your hair back. They're the leading hair growth experts in Australia and New Zealand, with clinics in Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Gold Coast, Perth and Auckland. At Grow, they understand that hair loss can be a sensitive issue. That's why they offer a variety of personalised treatments, all designed to give you the best possible results. So whether you're experiencing male or female pattern hair loss, they have a solution for you. One of the most popular options is a minimally invasive hair transplant. It's virtually painless, performed by highly skilled professionals, and leaves no noticeable scarring. With Grow's online consultation, starting your journey towards a fuller head of hair has never been easier. So don't wait any longer. Get the confidence back that you deserve with Grow Clinics. Visit their website at growclinics.com.au or give them a call today to book a free consultation. That's growclinics.com.au. Grow Clinics, defy genetics with Grow.
Brown
Park.
So how do you go from living a totally adrenaline-driven life?
I know where this is going.
Then becoming an author, living, and I don't want to call it a mundane life, but the thrills or the adrenaline.
It's more subdued.
More subdued. But a better way to put it. But I mean, just how do you go from that to what you're doing now as an author?
My wife would have you believe, and she'd be right, that I struggle with it. Mm-hmm. Not so much the author piece, and we'll get there in a minute, but I've certainly, my life has changed dramatically in the last few years, particularly since leaving my last job, which wasn't a voluntary departure, by the way. They punted me and a lot of guys on age, if you can believe it. But Japanese company, Swiss Japanese company, so they don't have things like, well, you can't sack someone because they're 58.
Right. Does that mean, don't mind me asking, how old are you now?
I'm 62.
Jesus, you look good for 62.
Thanks, man. Keep it coming.
Far out. There you go. There is hope for all of us. Anyway, keep on going.
There is. So what you're looking at, this isn't the product of clean living. I'll have you know.
Right. Good job. Okay, so tell us what you diet then. What do you do?
Look, I've been a lifetime athlete, but to be honest with you, I've really let that drop since I've come back to Australia from Hong Kong. Big runner, big gym guy. I eat clean, but I still eat clean, but I don't exercise like I used to. I bloody well should, and I do need it, if for no other reason than my mental health.
Yeah.
Which, it's always been a big thing for me. Don't exercise. Like if I didn't go to the gym every single day in Hong Kong, or and run every 2 or 3 days, I'd go off.
Yeah.
And I potentially still do that now. So one of the beauties of writing, as hard as it is, and maybe we can explore that if you like. I mean, it's a tough gig, but I can completely inhabit a world of my own making. It makes me sound like a bit of a Walter Mitty, I know, but authors can inhabit this world, and they can of their own making, and characters who they have created, and they can manipulate that world and those characters to do and be exactly what they want. So it's quite escapist. There's no two ways about it. And which is why people read. And I write in the thriller genre, so people read for a whole bunch of reasons. And one of those reasons, including me, is sometimes you'll pick up a thriller and you'll want to read it because you want to escape what might be otherwise a fairly humdrum, 9-to-5 existence that might be driving you nuts.
How did your mental health hold up with that? Because is it almost like you need to get that fix of adrenaline or that excitement?
Yeah. I didn't start writing as a release or a cure to some of the sort of darker times that I do struggle with now and again, and have done for many, many years. And I'm not the Lone Ranger there. I didn't start writing because of it, but I did find that the release of writing and this inhabiting of this world and these people, these characters, really made me happy. And again, my wife has commented that she feels that, as hard work as it is, I'm really, truly my happiest when I'm locked away in the study, hammering away on the keyboard. That probably says more about me than anything else, but it's certainly a release for me, and I love it.
No, I bet. It's almost like journaling in a way, but you're journaling a storyline rather than your own thoughts and feelings, I guess, in a certain way. Because I've just started journaling again after so many years, and I definitely feel better after writing things down and putting things down on paper. So I guess it could be quite cathartic to write, a story.
Yeah, well, look, there's probably a parallel you can draw there for sure. I don't reckon I'm disciplined enough to journal, to be honest. I mean, I guess it's no accident that my protagonist, the main protagonist in my novels, is a very flawed character, more of an anti-hero. He drinks too much. He used to be pretty fit, but he drinks too much. He smokes too much. He's got some fairly dubious or fairly sort of wonky moral and ethical compass that doesn't often point to true north. But at his heart, he's a decent human, but he struggles a lot. So there's probably, I've never really thought about it too much, but there's probably no accident that he is like he is.
Would people that you've worked with notice themselves in your book somewhere? Like, are there people that you can manipulate into a character that you go, you know what, I really didn't like that arsehole, I'm going to have him killed off? Let me think. No.
No?
Okay.
I've been, God, it's been tempting. Like almost so tempting. I'm going to use this bloke's real name. Fuck him. I'm going to use his real name, and he's going to be dropped off a bridge in a Hessian bag.
Yeah. How much of what you see in your career is like the movies? So I can see why you're a writer, because you had us there in the helicopter. You were like, you're there.
It wasn't a helicopter. It was an aeroplane.
Aeroplane, and you're lined up with your troops there and everything like that. When you're watching a movie, do you go, oh, what a load of bullshit? That's nothing like that at all.
Yeah, I do, often. And which is kind of weird, because as a novelist, as a writer, I'm expecting my readers often to suspend belief.
Yeah.
For perhaps a slightly unbelievable situation. But having said that, I honestly try and keep what is happening in my books, where they are, what is going on, and particularly the action scenes, absolutely accurate and true to form. So, I don't know, take a fight scene. They don't go on for minutes and minutes like they do.
Where you can cop a hit to the head with a baseball bat and get up and keep fighting again.
Yeah, and, two blokes just brutally punching each other for 5 minutes, until the sexy girl in the singlet manages to pull off a clean shot and kill the bad guy, right? It doesn't happen that way. Street fights, and I have been in them, street fights are short, brutal, and violent with no rules. You use every single means and method at your disposal. It's not Marquess of Queensberry rules. So my fight scenes are very, very short.
Yep.
They're over in about 20 or 30 heartbeats because that's the way it is. Gunplay is always at very close range and occurs with very little or no warning. Gunfights don't happen standing, 25, 30 metres away from each other down a dusty street. Interestingly, I digress again. I read a fascinating history piece the other day about gunfights in the American West, that they didn't actually really happen. Certainly not the way Hollywood depicted them. They were most likely just like gunfights today, right up close, under 5 metres, and often in the back, and with no warning. To answer your question, I watch these movies and I read some books, but mostly movies, and I just go, oh, God, that is just such bullshit. It just would not play out like that.
So Hollywood comes knocking. AC, we want to turn your book into Hollywood blockbuster.
Yeah.
Netflix,
for example.
Tom Cruise is going to star. How do you then go, well, I want the fight scenes to be 10 seconds because that's what it's like in real life. And they'll go, well, look, we need to bleed it out to about 15.
I see where you're going with this. I would completely sell out.
Good boy.
Nice,
correct answer. And we all would do the same thing.
I'm not going to sit here and look down the barrel of the camera and bullshit you and go, no way, I'm going to stand on my artistic morals.
I can just see Andy's Netflix show, and it's going to be a guy standing over the top of somebody with a gun, telling his life story. You motherfucker! I told you I'd get you one day. You're going to blah blah blah. And it's because whenever that happens, I'm like, I'm not going to stand over the motherfucker. I'm just going to shoot him, and then this job done.
And like bad guy monologues. Why does the bad guy, bad Bond villain monologues, they bang on for 10 minutes instead of just killing Bond?
It always does my head in.
They want to bang on, and I've got the odd monologue in there, to be honest. But again, I keep them pretty brief, mostly so the bad guy can just have a quick crow about what a genius he is before something happens.
Because the bad guy would win a whole lot more if he just took the first shot and movie done.
Yeah, if he just shut the fuck up and took the shot, bad guy wins. But I'm in a pretty happy space with where I'm going, and we shall see. I've already started sort of thinking I need a premise for book 4. Which is the hard bit. Like, what's this one about?
And how do you do that? How do you come up with the idea now? Like, does it just come to you in the middle of the night, or how does it happen?
Yeah, most often something like that. Or you might hear a news item. Something's happened in, I don't know, pick a spot. Something's happened in Bangkok or Bangladesh. Like, this has happened. And, with your sort of your writer's head on, you sort of go, Jesus, how did that happen? Oh, here's an interesting twist and a background to how that might have happened, and then all of a sudden you've got a premise.
Look at maybe here's something for you. In Bangladesh, somebody working in one of the sweatshops,
garment factory, yeah,
and a garment factory is a weapon, and all of a sudden loses his shit.
Do you know what? Wouldn't be the first time that happened in a Bangladesh garment factory. Absolutely abominable circumstances there, and these Western companies say, oh yeah, we're getting stuff made in Bangladesh, but we're fully signed on to all these protocols and treaties. We're making it sustainably and ethically. I've been in some of I'm not going to mention this particularly huge brand name, but I've been in some of their, and they are sweatshops. Yeah. They're absolutely sweatshops. And while these people aren't slaves, they may as well be. Child labour, So, yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff. I might go away now and think about that one. That's a good suggestion. And he starts he or she starts sewing something into the fabric of all these trendy Western clothes that are killing people in New York and LA and London, and
or works in an iPhone factory.
Careful. Apple is not going to let this go on Apple Podcast if you keep that up.
I love iPhones, and I'm just checking my iPhone now. It's the greatest tool, and my beautiful Mac. Thank you, Apple.
Hey, look, and we are in the Apple solar system as well. So, Apple, we love you too.
We do. Please don't take us off the App Store. Anyway, look, Dragon's Claw, Dragon's Back, and Dragon's Eye, possibly Dragon's Ear, coming up very soon. We'll put the links to all the books in our show notes of the podcast, and obviously on our socials and stuff like that.
Good job. Thanks, Andy. We appreciate your time, man.
Thank you so much, man.
Not too easy. I've had a blast. I really enjoyed chatting to you.
The Brown Podcast.
Why are you happy?
Because I don't want to be sad.
Gotta get that hair back, bringing it alive. Grow Clinics helping us to revive. Let's take it to the sky. Grow Clinics, sponsors of the show. They helping us restore from the roots to the tips. We're feeling so fine. Round Park Podcasts, swinging it every time.